Okay. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Shantal Rodriguez Flores, and I am researcher in the University of Vigo, and I'm going to talk about plant species visited by Vespa velutina in Galicia. Okay. Okay, in the recent times, to start, I have to say that in the recent times, the number of the biological invasion has continuously increased worldwide. And the environmental, economic, and social impact they cause make them a great concern. And Vespa velutina is one of these invasive species. The original distribution of Vespa velutina covers most of the Southeast Asia. However, in 2004, the first nets were detected in France, demonstrating a perfect adaptation to the climatic and vegetation condition of the neighboring country and given reason to represent a threat to the colonization and of a considerable portion of the Europe. The introduction of these species in Europe can be considered as one of the causes that negatively affects pollinators in these times. Vespa velutina, in addition, is an additional stress factor for honeybees and other pollination, being the first invasive bee predator which is accidentally introduced into Europe from Asia. Then the expansion of this species has been advancing in recent times, and today several European countries are threatened by Vespa velutina. Due to the proximity and bioclimatic similarities of the Peninsula Northwest with French territory, this species could have been introduced into our community, Galicia. And in Galicia, in 2020, more than 28,000 nests has been geolocated. And it was in the 2013 when the effects that this species cause in our community were detected for the first time. And these effects were and are based on the predation on other insect species being a threat to native biodiversity, deterioration of commercial quality and for the consumption of the fruit productions, since the hornet feeds on fruit such as pears, apples, figs, and mainly grapes. It has an excellent adaptation to urban and semi-urban areas, which increasing the risk of the bite and social alarm. And the construction of large nests in trees and even in shrubs, being therefore especially dangerous when carry out agricultural or forestry works. Okay, Vespa velutina is a species that exhibits social and flexible behavior, and this may have contributed to its introduction. In addition, the invasive success of this species is all relating to the ability of a single queen to found a large colony and produce many reproductive females, which then offer a large dispersal capacity. In addition, the abundance of Apis mellifera throughout Europe favors the multiplication of this species. As I said before, it is probably its main prey. In this case, one of the most damaged sector is the beekeeping sector. Disrupting the activity of this colony, of the colonies of honeybees, and causing, among other effects, a drop in the production and in the stocks. Okay, so to fight this hornet, it's important to know its behavior, and this implies knowing the resort that is used when, for example, when the founders emerge during the colony's development, or and at the end of the cycle. We have to say that the nectar and pollen are nutritionally superior to other plant materials, and are the main food source for many bees and wasps. Like other Hymenoptera, Vespa velutina, these hornets require carbohydrate as a key energy source. So floral nectar is one of the major sugar resources for them. In fact, hornets are frequently observed visiting flowers to feed on nectar. Because the flower visiting is immediately associated with the ecology and the life history of hornets, and because research obtained from flowers should be a significant determinant of their reproductive success, flower visiting of the hornet is an important research subject in the ecology and life history evolution. So, con respect to this, the main objective of this was to identify some plant species visited by Vespa velutina from the pollen of the body of queens and their digestive tract and their digestive tract of the larvae, and identify some specific characteristic of this plant, such as volatile organic compounds. Okay, and the study of plants more often visited by Vespa velutina was done using field observations. Okay, once founder emerge during spring, depending on the weather conditions, they are seen consuming sugary liquids as a first resort. And these nectar are offered by flowering plants such as spring camellias and flowers of fruit trees, for example, of the genus Prunus, and they can also be seen in other plants that blooms in this season in Galicia. But they can see in ornamental plants such as Callistemum or Fuchsia. That is very typical in the gardens of Galicia. During the summer, the presence of the hornet focuses on the predation of bees in apiaries. However, they can also be seen in fruit trees, devouring peacocks, plums, pears, or apple, until well into autumn. At this time, and at the same time as the autumn blooms, are observed again in camellias, winter camellias, and in other plants such as Mentha suavolans, Echium viburnum, or Edera helix, or Erythrotea japonica, Metla. Okay. It's important to note that queens, even the workers, in all the periods, all use other plants for objectives others than collecting nectar and pollen. For example, during the spring, some hornets have been seen on the leaf on fruit leaf of the genus Prunus, feeding on aphid. Although it should be noted that the production of honeydew from aphids may also be a resource used. At the end of the summer, the genus Abies is another example. We have observed that this conifer is teeming with different species of aphid, but also with other species of arachnid, for example, and that they could take advantage of. Okay, one of the objectives of this study has been to see the pollen types that are part of the body and the interior of the digestive tract of some of the queens that were observed in the field. So, the extraction and the identification of the external pollen in the body of the hornet was made by pollen analysis. From all the samples, hornet samples, a total of 27 pollen types plants were extracted that belong to 21 families. The most representative genera were those of the Apiaceae, Fagaceae, Myrtaceae, Olethaceae, and Rosaceae families. And for the pollen type for the plant that were present in a higher percentage in the hornets were Camellia, Eucalyptus, and Prunus. We have to say that the periods in which the maximum content peaks are seen in these pollen types was from March to the beginning of June. Okay, regarding to the extraction and identification of internal pollen from the hornet's digestive tract, in this case, the digestive content of the hornets has been extracted and then were prepared on a slide for the identification by microscope. And the internal pollen content was lower than that attached to the body of the hornet. The pollen found in the microscope preparation was mixed with the content in insect remains, but 12 pollen types belonging to 10 families has been detected. And in this case, by far, the most widely represented pollen type was Camellia, although Eucalyptus and Salix also stuck out. On this occasion, the highest percentage in the pollen detected in the digestive tract of hornet were in the months from the March to mid-April. Okay, to know the pollen that has been found in Vespa velutina larva, a collection of more than 100 nests has been acquired, from which between 4 or 6 larvae has been extracted from every comb whenever possible. And the digestive tract has been removed, extracted in the same way as in adult queens individuals. Okay, this study began in 2016, and today we are still collecting new nests from different parts of Galicia. The results generally show a total of 48 pollen types belonging to 32 families, and among the most representative were this list the family most representative. But in general, the plant found in the highest percentage in the larvas were Castanea, chestnut, Eucalyptus, Edera helix, ivy, Cytithus pollen types, Heather, Ecune, that is the Viper Baglos, Tarasacum, that is Dandelium, Fennel, Phoeniculus, and Quercus, that is oak pollen. If we take it into account the origin of the nest and differentiate the coas from the inland, the main pollen type are exactly the same. However, we can differentiate a higher content of pollen type of the Cytithus, Heather, Viper Baglos, oak pollen, and some pollen of Arbutus, that is the strawberry bat, that are more abundant in the inland. Although it is a bit difficult to determine the origin of this pollen in the larvae, we can say that it can be contributed by the feeding of the plant's research or by contamination by feeding or on bees. Since the larvae are fed mainly with the bees, but all with other pollinators. Okay, an important part of this work consists of seeing the composition in aromatic compounds of the plant, where we have seen the hornets. And the methodology used was based on head space, solid phase microstation in combination with gas chromatography. To date, a total of 33 plants has been analyzed, chosen according to the result present a moment ago, and the plants have been tested over a whole year, from 2020 to 2021. Sorry for the mistake. It's 2020. Okay, the extraction of volatiles using SPME is a fast and a practical technique that allowed the extraction of these pollen, these compounds with living plants. And using this technique, a total of 194 different volatile organic compounds were identified. Okay, volatile compounds were grouped into 40 chemicals categories, and most of them has function as aromatic hydrocarbons, and the most abundant were terpenes. Terpenes such as monoterpenes and sesquiterpenes. But ketones, fatty acid esters, and other esters, benzyl compounds, aldehydes, alcohols, and volatile sulfur compounds were identified too. If we take into account the chemical compounds of the most representative pollen type plants, we must mention, for example, Avi, Edera helix. Avi had, among other compounds, two terpenes in high concentration, myrcene and elexine, two compounds that are part of essential oils of plants. As for chestnuts, castanea, we highlight, among other compounds, methyl salicylate, that is a benzoate ester. It has a role as a flowering agent and is known as an insect attractant, and it has always been noted in resistance to plant pathogens. Along with these compounds, an aromatic ketone called acetophenone has been detected too, and both compounds have already been detected in castanea, but also as a compound derived from insects. As for camellia, we can highlight the monoterpene linanol and its derivatives. Its floral scent with a minty touch has given it a certain value for use in aromatic products, for example. And then we must also talk about the compounds of the genus Prunus, since many of the fruit trees that velutina visit belong to this genus. And in this case, many benzene compounds were detected, but all farnesene sesquiterpene. These compounds have been detected in both plants and insects, having function in an allelochemical communication. Different terpenes were detected in eucalyptus. One of them was aromadendrene, and it is a defensive compound present in the eucalyptus leaf and entomological induced. Finally, I must say that this study has identified some of the plants whom pollens had been detected in the body and the digestive tract of queens and larvae. Its volatile characteristics have also been analyzed. The plant belonged to the typical flora of Galicia, and the volatile compounds were natural components of the plants. Some of them present their analogies as insect pheromones. This conclusion has been reached as a result of a study developed in collaboration with the Polytechnic Institute of Bragança, Portugal, where volatile compounds extracted from living hornet were analyzed. Some of these compounds, such as, for example, nonanal or farnesene, has been identified in this study, in this present study. And these compounds could play an important role in the communication of Vespa velutina, performing function such as alarm pheromones. Therefore, this study will continue in a next step, testing some of these compounds as trapping baits. And that is all, and thank you very much.